Welcome, Mayor Hamilton. You have a report for us on infrastructure, I understand.
Thank you very much. I appreciate being here tonight. Thank you for welcoming here. I want to talk, this really comes from some conversation I've had with some of you asking about, are we investing in the basic infrastructure? And I know you know and we know, and there's so much detail, though, that tonight I want to kind of give an overview, high-level look of the work that we've done together over the last 3 years. And this is on the basics of city investments, on the infrastructure in things like public safety and public works and parks and transit and the city of Bloomington utilities in particular, the basic investments in the vehicles, the replacement of equipment, the structures and those kinds of things. So I'm going to share some data with you, and this will be available as those who want to follow up with it and appreciate talking more if you'd like. And Brian's going to help me over there. Thank you. So first on the left, that's a picture of a hand through a fire truck. That's not what you want to see. That was 2015. That was actually a frontline truck, meaning one of the first trucks to be assigned in 2015. We had engines that were stalling out on the way to fires in 2015. And it was very important that we fixed that. We had weekends, many weekends in 2015 that did not have a backup engine available in the city, and that was not acceptable. That's just a push-in video. You don't have to, don't make fun of me pushing, because I wasn't pushing that hard, but you can switch to the next one. We pushed that in. You'll see here a graph of the vehicles purchased by the Bloomington Fire Department over the last 9 years. Very basically, in the last 3 years, we've purchased 12 vehicles. In the previous 6 years, we purchased 4. We have made major investments in the fire department with your help, and as you might know, PS Lit. Next one, Brian, too. This is a chart of the capital investments for primarily equipment. These are expensive vehicles, you know that, but they're also critically important to provide services to our community. You'll see we also provided a quartermaster system for suits, as you know, for the fire protective gear. But you can see the major improvements and enhancements and investments in our fire department. I'm going through this relatively quickly because I know you have a busy night. Let me talk about police a second. Police vehicles is the major investment that we make in our system in terms of the capital improvements and investments that we make. Again, if you compare the last 3 years, we have bought 37 vehicles for the police department, and you compare that to the previous 6 years, twice as long, there were 32 vehicles bought, fewer. I heard from Mr. Oldham today, there was actually, in a recent year before 2016, a wheel just fell off a police car on the way. We were not keeping up with our vehicles. The next slide, too, will show a similar amounts of investments. And I want you to know that in this public safety investment, we together, and certainly supported by the very important public safety lit local income tax, have been able to give our fire and police departments the major support for equipment that they need. I will note, for example, it is this kind of investment, along with, of course, the training, the expectations and the skills, but these kinds of investments have given our fire department an improved ISO rating, the international rating. We've moved up to a 2, which is, we're close to a 1. It is this kind of investment that makes that happen and saves property taxes for everybody. Second, casualty insurance costs, I'm sorry. Second, it is this kind of investment that lets our police department earn first ever national accreditation as a police department. We're one of the few in the state, and it is this kind of quality investment in the basics of getting government right that's been so important. Let me turn quickly to public works. You can't see this map very well. This is a trans map, as we call it. It's a software system that uses an enhanced inspection of our streets, our sidewalks, our signs. We now have all 234 miles of street lanes rated from 0 to 100. This is what we now can use to steer and prioritize our investments in the infrastructure for streets, sidewalks, replacing signs and that kind of thing. It's much more detailed than we're able to do by hand. Brian, the next one. You can see here a list of the lane miles resurfaced. Again, this is over a 9-year period. You'll see a big bump in 2012, which reflected federal stimulus money that we were able to get in 2012. But you can see as well in the last 3 years that we are enhancing and increasing the amount of lane miles that we've been able to resurface. Next graph is potholes. We only have good data for 3 years on potholes. I can go into that later if you want, but we do know that we've dramatically increased the investment in replacement and filling of potholes. Part of that is weather-driven. As we have more freezes and thaws, you get more potholes. You'll see in reports in the coming days about the speed and numbers of those as well. Next slide talks about sanitation. You know, we've worked on sanitation together in serious ways. You can see here, this is the vehicles purchased by the sanitation department. In the last 3 years, we purchased 10 vehicles for sanitation. In the previous 6 years, we purchased 4 in total. Next slide will show a video. You all know we worked hard to automate our system. You can see a quick summary of that here. You do remember these, right? Remember these? Don't see them anymore. We got a whole new system with carts and software and identification of way to automate, and we're protecting our workforce with that investment. Next, this is just a summary of overall Public Works Division sanitation fleet, streets, and the capital investments. And again, you can see particularly a recovery, if you will, from very down years of investments in replacing vehicles. Again, we had a lot of work to catch up for, and I'm very proud together that we've been able to do that. Public safety, public works, let's talk a moment about parks. Again, these are general parks investments. These are the upkeep, the replacement of playgrounds, the replacement of buildings, roofs, trail enhancements, vehicle purchases, not including things like the investment in the Beeline Trail, which was in 2011, or the Switchyard investment now, but the more fundamental investments in parks. You can see as well in the last 3 years, major investments in those basic sustaining investments in our parks. You'll see 2018 is a little low. That basically reflects the intense focus on Switchyard Park. Next graph, you can see some of the things this is involving in buying the tree picking truck on the bottom, replacement of parks, the new electric vehicle for the Beeline monitoring, upgrading of trails, et cetera. And again, like in public safety, I'd point out that it is, yes, Switchyard is exciting. It's huge. But one of the reasons our Parks Department won the award, the gold medal, as the best Parks Department for a city our size in this country is because we are doing these basic investments to keep up the quality of the material, the facilities, the 30-plus parks that we do have. Let me talk just very briefly about transit. Our Bloomington transit system has about 50 buses, 50-plus major, good full-size buses in its fleet. You can see here the list of buses purchased by here. Again, in the past 3 years, Bloomington Transit has purchased 18 buses. Some of that is through grant money awarded and other MPO funds. In the previous 6 years, double that length of time, they purchased 10. So again, this is doing the basics of making sure our government has the equipment and investment in the facilities that we need. We continue in Bloomington Transit to have the most per capita rides of any transit system in the state of Indiana, and we're really proud of that. Let me turn just to a few now on the water utilities, City of Bloomington utilities. Again, this is not dealing, for example, with the expansion of facilities in the Monroe water treatment plant, for example, in 2012. This is describing the investments in the basics of keeping up our water system, replacing pipes, upgrading pumps, replacing pumps as needed. And you can see here as well, in the last 3 years, we've seen major investments at the water treatment plant. You know, one of the things we dealt with when we got into office in 2016 was that plant's use of dealing with disinfectant byproducts, and some of this reflects that investment. The next page deals with water distribution. In other words, the pipes that carry the water from the drinking water plant to the residents or the other facility using water. We had about 40 main breaks or so in 2015. In 2018, we had about 80. The infrastructure of our water system needs attention. That is why you see a big graph growth in 2018, because we need to deal with the basic distribution system for our water. As you know, you approved, and so did the Utilities Board up in the state, an increase in water, we are now in the midst of a major main replacement program to deal with that. That's been bonded. Next is the wastewater plants. These are the two major wastewater plants, Dillman and Blucher Pool, which deal with the water waste coming from a system before we put it back into the environment. Again, you can see as you look at this is a 7-year graph of the investments in the basics of our systems. We do know at Dillman we're going to be looking at a major expansion coming. That's not reflected in this, but this is showing the ability to do what needs to be done to keep the water treatment well. And last, I think last on the, no, two more on the utilities. This is what we call collection. So this would be the sewer pipes bringing from homes and facilities to the wastewater plant. Again, this shows a 7-year graph of the investments we've made from the City of Bloomington Utilities in that collection system. There was a major replacement of a 36-inch sewer line in 2018 running south through Switchyard Park, which was invested in. And again, this too requires ongoing investment, and I think you'll continue to see that from us. Last item on the utilities is stormwater. You know that's a first reading tonight. Bloomington, for many years, that stormwater rate in Bloomington has not changed for 16 years. We are among the lowest stormwater rates in the state in terms of collecting stormwater. And while we've done more in the last 3 years, you will hear more next week, I think, about this, but you will hear about the importance of replacing. For example, you will recall that at 3rd and Lincoln, we had a culvert that needed emergency replacing, which we did on a 5-year life to bolster that collapsing culvert. This continued investment, while we've done better in the last 3 years, we're going to need to keep working on that with major needs pending. So if I summarized all that we just went through, and I know that's very high level and that's very fast, but combining the public safety, the parks, the public works, utilities, transit together, that's about $39 million invested in these basic infrastructure improvements, replacements, updating of those in the last 3 years. That compares to 19 million similar expenditures in the previous 3 years. We do that together. I know you are committed, as I am committed, that this is the basic stuff that our community wants from city government and deserves from city government. The basics of public safety. They want fire engines that don't stall out on the way to the job. They want safety officers who can get where they need to get. They want our water system well invested, well protected, and our transit system, et cetera. I'm really proud of what we've been able to do. Again, PS Lit is a big part of that. We've also done some bonding with general obligation bonds. We had reversions that we've worked very hard to use multi-million-dollar reversions to put back into these basics, and I appreciate your help on that. I wanted to share that. I wanted you to, at this large, high level, know that we've together done a lot of work to get these basics right. And the last couple points I'll make closing out Beyond these basic services, we've done a couple things, more than a couple, that I want you to note. We've invested, you compare to that $39 million, we've invested $13 million in new solar facilities together at 30 facilities that the city owns, adding 5 megawatts of solar production. That's a quintupling of the solar productivity that we can do from the city, including 13 roof replacements. That's important, it's the right thing to do, and we're going to keep working at it. And this last slide, I just want to share this list. Again, these are not the basics. These are not the, let's just make sure we have the basics right that we're doing, but this is also what we're doing together to invest in the infrastructure and the success of this community. And you can see that list from basically the string of pearls with the mill and the trades district investment, the expected garage investment that you approved a few weeks ago, estimated convention center investments. Of course, many of these are TIF funds. The purchase of the current hospital site, the 24 acres that we as a community will be planning how we want to reuse. Switchyard Park, we're all familiar with, again, TIF money. The new animal shelter, that $11 million in general obligation bonds are going to be used by Parks and Transportation to do the ongoing replacements of intersections, trails, paths, ramps, those kinds of things. And then finally, the $10 million in bicentennial bonds, which is supporting 4 new trails, downtown street alleyway improvements, enhancements, gateways, trees, et cetera. That's a big list. Again, mostly tonight, I want to just talk about those basics and give you that kind of overview, which you have helped happen over the last 3 years, and then finish with that list of some of these other special investments that we're making for the community's future. So thank you for the time. Again, this will be available for you if you want to look at that, and we can certainly follow up with questions if you'd like. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Hamilton. Well, let's provide a few moments for questions if council has questions. Councilmember Granger?
Thank you. I don't have a question. I do want to make sure that we do get the slides, that we don't have to, that it comes to us. But I want to say thank you for this. I mean, I think this is the most important thing that government does, is maintain the infrastructure. So it's nice to kind of see it all in writing. Thank you.
It's easy to miss. We get in the weeds all the time.
Exactly.
So I appreciate the opportunity to do it.
Let me rephrase that. Are there questions or comments from council? Sorry. None? Well, thank you very much. This has been very informative, and hang on to those stickers because I think they're going to be collector's items.
Thanks.
Oh, and I did want to say thank you for I think the solar PV investments will pay dividends to both Bloomington and the planet. So that's very, very pleasing to see that.